The massive council chamber on Nexus Prime station was the largest structure ever built by any civilization in the known galaxy. It floated in orbit around a dying star, a testament to the power of the 12 elder species who had ruled the stars for over 10,000 years. The walls were made of a material that seemed to shift between solid and liquid, reflecting the light of 100 different suns collected from across the galaxy. Ambassadors from every major species sat in tiered seats that rose toward a ceiling so high it disappeared into artificial clouds. Ambassador Catherine Holloway stood at the center of this vast chamber, feeling very small and very human. She was 52 years old, with silver streaks running through her dark hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of decades spent in difficult negotiations. Behind her stood her small delegation of 6 humans, including her aide Daniel Price, a young man with sharp eyes and a memory that forgot nothing humanity had only discovered.
Faster than light travel.
In galactic terms, they were infants. Every other species in this chamber had been traveling the stars for thousands of years before the first. Human looked up at the night sky and wondered what those bright points of light might be. "Hi, Chancellor." Vorath of the Zelthari hegemony rose from his seat at the highest tier. He was an insectoid creature standing nearly 3 meters tall with compound eyes that seemed to see in every direction at once. His exoskeleton was a deep purple color, and when he moved, it made a sound like dried leaves crackling in wind. The Zelthari had been the dominant species in galactic politics for 6,000 years. They considered themselves the natural leaders of all intelligent life. "The human delegation will now approach," Vorath announced. His voice was translated through a device that every being in the chamber wore, converting his clicking mandible sounds into words each species could understand. "You have been summoned to discuss your integration into galactic civilization." Catherine walked forward, her boots echoing on the strange floor. She had prepared for this moment for 3 years. Every human government on Earth had contributed to the training and research that had brought her here. The future of her entire species rested on what happened in this chamber. "Hi, Chancellor," she said, her voice steady despite the fear she felt. "Humanity is honored by this invitation. We come in peace, seeking friendship and cooperation with all the great civilizations of the galaxy." There was a ripple of something that might have been amusement among the assembled delegates. Catherine ignored it. Vorath gestured with one of his forearms, and a holographic document appeared in the air before Catherine. It was written in a universal script that all spacefaring species could read, developed thousands of years ago for exactly this purpose. "This is the Standard Integration Treaty," Vorath explained. "Every species that wishes to participate in galactic affairs must sign this document. There are no exceptions. There have never been exceptions. Read it carefully, though the terms are not negotiable." Catherine already knew what the treaty contained. Human intelligence services had spent decades gathering information about it, but she read through it again, making sure she understood every word. The treaty required humanity to surrender 70% of all military vessels to galactic oversight. It demanded that every human colony accept a council-appointed advisory board with veto power over local decisions. It restricted human expansion to no more than 20 star systems without explicit council approval. It required all advanced weapons research to be supervised by council inspectors. It mandated that humans could not form independent alliances with other species without council permission. Daniel leaned close to Catherine and whispered, "It's worse than we thought. Section 47 basically makes us a client state." Catherine nodded slightly. She had seen Section 47. It stated that in any dispute between humanity and a council member species, the council's judgment would be final and binding. Humanity would have no right of appeal. She looked up at Vorath, at his compound eyes that reflected no emotion she could read. She looked around the chamber at the other delegates, some humanoid, some completely alien, all of them watching her with what she now recognized as expectation. They expected her to sign. Every species that had stood where she was standing had signed. It was simply what one did if one wanted to survive in the galaxy. "Hi, Chancellor," Catherine said, her voice carrying clearly through the silent chamber. "I have read this document carefully. I understand its terms and its implications. Then you are ready to sign? Voroth asked. There was a hint of impatience in his translated voice. This was supposed to be a formality, a ceremony, not a discussion. No, Catherine said. I am not. The silence that followed was absolute. Catherine could hear her own heartbeat, could feel the eyes of 1,000 alien beings fixed upon her. You misunderstand, Voroth said slowly, as if speaking to a child. This is not a request. This is the price of participation in galactic civilization. Every species has paid it. The Nephilim paid it. The Serati paid it. Even the Kathrani, proud as they are, paid it. You will pay it as well, Catherine repeated. We will not. Ambassador Zalera of the Nephilim Concordat leaned forward in her seat. The Nephilim were ancient even by galactic standards, tall and willowy beings with skin that seemed to glow with inner light. They were known throughout the galaxy for their wisdom and their long view of history. Young Ambassador Zalara said, her voice gentle but serious, Do you truly understand what you are doing? No species has ever refused the Standard Integration Treaty. The consequences of refusal are severe. Economic isolation. Military vulnerability. You will be alone in a galaxy that does not forgive weakness. Catherine turned to face Zalera. There was something in the old ambassador's eyes that might have been respect or might have been pity. Ambassador Zalara, with great respect, I understand perfectly. My government has studied your history carefully. We know what happens to species that sign this treaty. They become dependent on council protection. Their military capabilities decline. Their innovation slows. They become comfortable and controlled. And after a few thousand years, they forget that they were ever anything else. She turned back to Voroth. Standing straight, despite the fear that made her hands want to shake, humanity did not crawl out of the mud of Earth, survive ice ages and plagues and wars and the splitting of the atom, just to become pets in someone else's empire. We will find our own path among the stars, with or without your approval. Voroth's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation that needed no translation. Then you choose isolation, he declared. You choose to be enemies of galactic civilization. No, Catherine said. We choose to be free. If that makes us your enemies, then perhaps you should ask yourselves what kind of civilization requires enemies to maintain its power. She turned and walked toward the exit, her delegation falling into step behind her. Every step felt like a mile. She expected at any moment to feel weapons fire strike her back, to hear the order for her arrest, but nothing happened. The council simply watched as the humans left. Outside the chamber, Daniel grabbed her arm. Catherine, do you have any idea what you just did? Yes, she said, her voice finally showing the strain she had been hiding. I just made humanity the enemy of the entire galaxy. Now, we find out if we can survive it. Somewhere behind them, in the council chamber, High Chancellor Voroth was already ordering the implementation of sanctions. The isolation of humanity had begun. 5 years had passed since Catherine Holloway walked out of the Galactic Council chamber, and the galaxy had done everything possible to make humanity regret that decision. Trade routes that human merchants had used for decades were suddenly closed. Alien stations that had welcomed human visitors now turned them away at gunpoint. Technology that humanity had been purchasing from elder species was no longer available at any price. The Council expected humanity to collapse within a decade. They expected food shortages, economic disaster, and eventually a desperate delegation returning to Nexus Prime to sign whatever treaty was put in front of them. They had seen it happen before with other stubborn species. Isolation always worked eventually, but humanity did not collapse. Instead, something strange happened. Something the Council had never anticipated. Humanity got angry. And then humanity got busy. Admiral Christopher Grant stood on the bridge of the Resolute, the first warship of a new class that human engineers had designed entirely without alien assistance. He was 53 years old, a career military officer who had spent most of his life thinking humans would never need a real space navy. The isolation had changed that thinking very quickly. Admiral, we're receiving a distress signal from the colony ship Wanderer, reported Lieutenant Maria Santos from her communications station. She was young, barely 30, but she had already seen more combat than most officers twice her age. Kathrani Raiders. They're attacking in the Vega system. Grant's jaw tightened. The Kathrani were a warrior species who had taken the Council's sanctions as permission to prey on human vessels. In the past 3 years, they had destroyed 14 ships and killed over 6,000 human colonists. They never took prisoners. They never showed mercy. They seemed to enjoy the killing. How far? Grant asked. For hours at maximum speed, Maria replied. Sir, we won't make it in time. Grant slammed his fist against the arm of his command chair. Another ship lost. Another 1,000 lives ended because the galaxy had decided that humanity did not deserve protection. Send a message to Earth Command, he ordered. Full report on the attack. And get me a direct line to Secretary Holloway. Catherine Holloway had been promoted twice since her famous refusal at the Council chamber. She was now Secretary of Interstellar Affairs, the highest diplomatic position in the United Earth Federation. The years had aged her more than they should have. Every death, every destroyed ship, every failed negotiation weighed on her conscience, but she had never considered surrender. She received Grant's message in her office in Geneva, a city that had been rebuilt 3 times in human history and still stood as a symbol of human persistence. Through her window, she could see the construction yards where new ships were being built day and night. Humanity had turned all of its considerable industrial capacity toward one goal: survival. Her assistant, Nathan Brooks, entered with a tablet containing the latest intelligence reports. The Kathrani attack on the Wanderer was particularly brutal, he said quietly. No survivors. They broadcast the whole thing as a warning to other human ships. Catherine closed her eyes for a moment. Behind her eyelids, she saw the faces of colonists she had never met. Families who had trusted their government to protect them. Children who would never grow up because a species of alien predators had decided that humans were easy prey. Nathan, she said. Opening her eyes, schedule a meeting with Admiral Grant and General Patricia Dunn, Priority 1. I think it's time we stop playing defense. The meeting took place 3 days later in a secure bunker beneath the Swiss Alps. Grant attended in person. Patricia Dunn, commander of Earth's ground forces and the most feared military strategist humanity had ever produced, joined via holographic projection from her command center on Mars. The Kathrani think we're weak, Patricia said without preamble. She was a small woman with close-cropped gray hair and eyes that seemed to look through people rather than at them. They think the isolation has broken us. They're wrong, but they'll keep attacking until we prove it. What are you suggesting? Catherine asked. A strike on their home system, Patricia replied. Not an invasion. A demonstration. We hit their military infrastructure, destroy their ability to project power beyond their own borders, and then we leave. We show them and everyone else watching that attacking humanity has consequences. Grant nodded slowly. We have the ships for it. The new Resolute-class battleships are better than anything the Kathrani have. Our pilots have been training for exactly this kind of operation. The Council will respond, Catherine pointed out. If we attack a member species, they'll use it as justification for direct military intervention. They're already looking for justification, Patricia said. Every month we survive makes them more nervous. At least this way we control the narrative. We're not aggressors. We're responding to 3 years of unprovoked attacks on civilian vessels. Catherine stood and walked to a wall display showing a map of human-controlled space. 17 star systems, scattered like islands in a vast ocean of hostile territory. Every one of those systems was filled with people who had trusted her judgment when she refused the treaty. Many ships would we lose? She asked quietly. Projections suggest 15 to 20% casualties, Grant replied. Maybe 300 dead, and if we do nothing? If we keep playing defense? Then the Kathrani attacks continue. Other species start to see us as prey. Within 5 years, we lose everything. Catherine turned back to face them. Her decision had already been made. It had been made the moment she read the report about the Wanderer. Do it, she said. But Admiral, I want you to give them every opportunity to surrender. I want the galaxy to see that we're not like them. We fight when we have to, but we don't enjoy killing. The Battle of Burning Skies, as it came to be known, began 3 weeks later. 30 human warships jumped into the Kathrani home system at dawn, local time. The Kathrani had never seen a coordinated attack on this scale. They had never imagined that the humans they had been hunting for sport would dare to strike back. Admiral Grant stood on the bridge of the Resolute as his ships tore through the Kathrani defense fleet. Human weapons were faster and more accurate than anything the Kathrani had faced. Human tactics were unpredictable, creative, almost wild. In 6 hours, the Kathrani navy was reduced to burning wreckage, Admiral Maria reported. The Kathrani command is requesting terms. Tell them we accept their immediate and unconditional surrender, Grant replied. All attacks on human vessels will cease immediately. All human prisoners will be released. Any violation will result in the complete destruction of their military capability. The Kathrani agreed. They had no choice, as the human fleet prepared to leave. Grant ordered one final message broadcast on every frequency in the system. Knowing it would be picked up by monitoring stations across the galaxy, this is Admiral Christopher Grant of the United Earth Federation. For 3 years, the Kathrani have attacked our ships and murdered our people without consequence. Today, there are consequences. Let this be a lesson to any species that believes humanity is weak. We do not want war. We do not seek empire. But we will defend ourselves against any threat from any source with any force necessary. Attack us at your peril. On Nexus Prime, High Chancellor Vorath received news of the battle with something approaching shock. The Kathrani were supposed to keep the humans contained, to wear them down through constant harassment until they had no choice but to submit. Instead, humanity had destroyed one of the Council's military client species in less than a day. This changes nothing, Vorath announced to his advisors. Though his voice lacked its usual confidence, the humans are still isolated. They cannot sustain this level of aggression forever. But privately, in the quiet of his chambers, Vorath felt something he had not experienced in centuries of political maneuvering. He felt afraid. And somewhere in the depths of space, Admiral Grant was already planning the next phase of humanity's survival. Not just defense anymore. Not just reaction. Now, humanity would start building something new. Something that would change the galaxy forever. 10 years had passed since Catherine Holloway refused to sign the treaty, and the Galactic Council was no longer laughing at humanity. The Council chamber on Nexus Prime, which had once been a place of absolute confidence and ancient power, now felt like a room full of frightened old men trying to understand a threat they had never imagined. High Chancellor Vorath called the emergency session at midnight, Galactic Standard Time. The delegates who filled the chamber were exhausted, anxious, and increasingly divided about what to do with the human problem. The situation has become critical, Vorath announced, his compound eyes scanning the assembled representatives. Human-controlled space has expanded from 17 systems to 47. Despite our sanctions, despite our blockades, despite our best efforts to contain them, Councillor Marath of the Sarati Union, a reptilian being with scales that shifted color based on his emotional state, currently showing a worried blue, leaned forward in his seat. How is this possible? They were supposed to collapse. Every projection said they would fail within a decade without access to our trade networks. The projections were wrong, Vorath admitted. The words seemed to physically pain him. Humans have developed technologies we do not fully understand. They have terraformed worlds we considered uninhabitable. Their population has doubled. Their military has tripled. And perhaps most concerning of all, they have begun forming alliances. Ambassador Kira of the Lumineth Empire stood abruptly. The Lumineth were energy beings who had achieved physical form through technologies so advanced it seemed like magic. They were among the oldest species in the galaxy and had never encountered a problem they could not solve through superior intellect and patience. Alliances with whom? Kira demanded. We control all the major species. Who would dare ally with the humans against the Council? The Nephilim Concordat has opened diplomatic channels with Earth, Vorath replied. The Sarati border colonies are trading with human merchants. Even some of our own Zelthari outlying systems have expressed interest in human technology. It seems that our sanctions have made humanity more attractive, not less. The chamber erupted into shouting. Delegates accused each other of disloyalty, of secret dealings, of undermining galactic unity. For several minutes, Vorath let them argue. He needed them to feel the fear before he proposed his solution. Finally, he raised all four of his arms, demanding silence. "Now, there is only one path forward," he declared. "We must form a coalition of concerned species and take direct action to contain human expansion permanently. Economic measures have failed. Diplomatic isolation has failed. Military pressure from proxy species like the Kathrani has failed. We must now consider unified military action." Ambassador Zalara of the Nephilim had remained silent throughout the meeting. Now she rose, her glowing form casting long shadows across the chamber. "High Chancellor," she said, her ancient voice carrying the weight of thousands of years of wisdom, "I must formally object to this proposal. What you are suggesting is not contain. It is war. War against a species that has done nothing except refuse to accept subjugation. They destroyed the Kathrani fleet," Counselor Mareth pointed out. "After the Kathrani murdered 6,000 of their civilians over 3 years," Zalara replied. "If any species had done to us what the Kathrani did to humanity, we would have responded the same way. Perhaps worse." Vorath's mandibles clicked with irritation. The Nephilim's sympathies for the humans are well known. But this council must act for the good of galactic civilization, not the romantic notions of one species. The good of galactic civilization? Zalara's voice rose with rare anger. "For 10,000 years, this council has maintained power by ensuring that no species can challenge our authority. We call it stability. We call it peace. But what it truly is, High Chancellor, is control. And now we face a species that refuses to be controlled, and we have no idea what to do except reach for weapons." The vote was held despite Zalara's objections. 8 species voted in favor of forming the coalition of concern. 4 abstained, including the Nephilim. The council was divided, but the majority had spoken. On Earth, Secretary Holloway received word of the coalition's formation during a working dinner with Admiral Grant and General Patricia Dunn. They were in a private dining room in the governmental complex, surrounded by screens showing real-time data about human military deployments across 47 star systems. "They're going to try to box us in," Patricia said, studying the intelligence reports that had just arrived. "Combined fleet operations along our borders, economic blockades reinforced by military patrols, and if we push too far, direct attacks on our outer colonies." "Our ships are better than theirs," Grant replied confidently. "We've proven that against the Kathrani. Our soldiers are better trained. Our technology is more advanced. If they want to fight, we can give them one." "Our people are tired, Chris," Catherine said quietly. She pushed her food around her plate without eating. 15 years of isolation, of being told by the rest of the galaxy that we don't belong, of watching our ships destroyed and our people killed. We've become strong, but strength isn't everything. She stood and walked to a window that looked out over the nighttime city. Somewhere out there, millions of humans were going about their lives, trusting their leaders to keep them safe in a hostile universe. "We need a different approach," she continued. "Fighting the coalition directly will cost us too much, even if we win. We need to make the coalition irrelevant." "How?" Patricia asked. Catherine turned back to face them. There was something in her eyes that neither of them had seen before. It was hope. "Ambassador Zalara has been communicating with us through back channels for months. The Nephilim are ready to publicly ally with humanity, and they're not alone. There are other species out there who have grown tired of the Council's control, who see what humanity has accomplished and want the same freedom for themselves." "You're talking about splitting the Council," Grant said slowly. "I'm talking about offering something better," Catherine replied. "The Council maintains power through fear and dependency. We can offer something they've never offered: true partnership. No subjugation, no oversight, no restrictions. Equal cooperation between species for mutual benefit." Patricia leaned back in her chair, considering the implications. "That's not just survival. That's revolution." "Yes," Catherine agreed. "It is. and it's the only way we survive long enough to matter. The announcement came 3 months later. The Nephilim Concordat, one of the oldest and most respected civilizations in the galaxy, publicly declared their alliance with the United Earth Federation. The diplomatic statement was broadcast across every communication network in known space. For 10,000 years, Ambassador Zalara's voice proclaimed, "The Nephilim have supported the Galactic Council because we believed it served the cause of peace and stability. We can no longer maintain that belief. The Council's treatment of humanity has revealed the truth about galactic civilization. It is not a partnership, but a prison. Today, the Nephilim choose freedom. Today, we stand with humanity." Within 6 months, 17 other species had joined what became known as the Free Worlds Compact. They were mostly smaller species, those who had always existed at the margins of galactic power. But together they represented a significant portion of the galaxy's population and resources. The Galactic Council watched in disbelief as their carefully constructed order began to crumble. Species that had been loyal for millennia were suddenly asking questions about the treaties they had signed. Worlds that had been quiet and compliant were demanding renegotiation. The foundation of 10,000 years of control was developing cracks. High Chancellor Vorath understood what was happening. Humanity had not just survived their isolation, they had used it as motivation to build something new, something that threatened everything he had spent his long life protecting. "They must be stopped," he declared to his remaining coalition allies. "Not just contained, stopped, before they tear apart everything we have built." But even as he spoke those words, Vorath knew that stopping humanity would require more than threats and sanctions. It would require war, not real war. The kind of war that the galaxy had not seen in thousands of years, and somewhere in the back of his ancient mind, he wondered if the Council could still win such a war, or if humanity had already won by simply refusing to play by rules that had kept the galaxy frozen in place. For 10,000 years, the answer would come sooner than anyone expected. Captain Benjamin Hayes had been exploring uncharted space for 3 months when the Council fleet found him. The Horizon was one of humanity's newest exploration vessels, designed not for war, but for discovery. Its mission was to travel beyond the boundaries of known space and make first contact with civilizations that the Galactic Council had never reached. Benjamin was 41 years old, with the kind of calm patience that made him perfect for long voyages into the unknown. His crew of 150 included humans and members of newly allied species, all working together in ways that would have seemed impossible just a few years earlier. His first officer was a Nephilim named Sereth, an ancient being who had volunteered for the mission because she wanted to see the galaxy through human eyes. She stood beside Benjamin on the bridge as the Council ships appeared on their sensors. 12 warships, reported Communications Officer Lisa Chen from her station. Zelthari configuration. "They're demanding we turn back immediately." Benjamin studied the sensor readings. The Council fleet had positioned itself directly between the Horizon and the unexplored region.
Oh.
They had been approaching for weeks. It was a clear message: go no further. They're claiming jurisdiction over uncharted space now. Benjamin asked, genuinely surprised. "They're trying to prevent you from making new contacts," Sereth observed. Her voice was calm, but Benjamin had learned to read the subtle shifts in her glowing form that indicated concern. "Every new alliance humanity builds weakens the Council's position. They're desperate to stop your expansion by any means necessary." "Send our response," Benjamin ordered. "Tell them the United Earth Federation does not recognize their authority over regions they have never explored. We're continuing our mission." The Council fleet commander was not pleased with this answer. His ships began to move, positioning themselves for an intercept course that would force the Horizon to either turn back or be destroyed. Benjamin watched the tactical display without expression. He had prepared for this possibility. Every human captain operating beyond protected space had prepared for it. "Lisa, send a coded signal to Admiral Grant. Priority 1. The signal traveled faster than any ship could move, using a communication technology that human scientists had developed specifically to counter the Council's attempts to isolate human vessels. Within minutes, Grant's response came back. It's confirmed. Support is on the way. Hold your position. Benjamin smiled slightly. Sareth, how long do you think those council ships will take to reach weapons range? At their current speed, approximately 40 minutes. Perfect. The council fleet commander watched his sensors with growing confidence as his ships closed the distance to the lone human exploration vessel. This would be easy. 1 ship against 12. The humans had made a mistake, venturing so far from their protected space. Then his sensors lit up with new contacts. 12 human warships materialized from hyperspace. Their weapons already powered and locked onto his fleet. At their head was the resolute Admiral Grant's flagship, its massive hull bristling with weapon systems that the council commander did not recognize. This is Admiral Grant to all council vessels. The human admiral's voice was calm, almost friendly. You are threatening a peaceful exploration mission in neutral space. I strongly suggest you reconsider your position. The council commander hesitated. His orders had been clear: prevent human expansion at all costs. But his intelligence had not mentioned that the humans could respond so quickly or with such force. The battle group facing him was small, but its ships were clearly more advanced than his own. He thought about engaging. His honor demanded it. But his experience told him that engaging would mean death for his crews and failure for his mission. We will withdraw, he said finally, the words bitter in his mouth. But this is not over. No, Grant agreed. I suspect it's just beginning. Council fleet retreated. The Horizon continued its mission. And across the galaxy, word spread that humanity could not be contained, could not be intimidated, could not be stopped. On Nexus Prime, High Chancellor Vorath received the news with grim acceptance. Every option short of full military confrontation had been tried and had failed. The coalition was crumbling. Species that had supported him were now questioning whether the cost of fighting humanity was worth the benefit of maintaining the old order. He called one final council session. We have one option remaining, he announced to the divided chamber. Direct military confrontation. A unified fleet action to destroy human military capacity before they become the dominant power in the galaxy. Zalera rose immediately. If we do this, we prove everything the humans have been saying about us. We prove that the Council maintains power through violence, not consent. I will not be party to genocide. Then the Nephilim can leave, Vorath replied coldly. Take your idealism and go. The rest of us must deal with reality. The vote was held. 5 species voted to join the war fleet. 7 abstained or openly refused. The Council, which had stood united for 10,000 years, was officially broken. On Earth, Catherine Holloway called an emergency meeting of the Free Worlds Compact. The alliance had grown to include 32 species now, a coalition of the willing that represented everything the old Council was not. They're coming with everything they have, she told the assembled ambassadors. The holographic display showed the Council war fleet gathering near the border of human space. 2,000 warships from 5 species. The largest fleet assembled in galactic history. How many ships can we field? Asked Ambassador Sarath, who had returned from the Horizon mission to represent the Nephilim in this critical moment. 800 human warships, Admiral Grant replied, plus another 400 from our allies. We're outnumbered nearly 2 to 1, and we should retreat, suggested the Serati delegate. Draw them deeper into our territory. Make them fight on ground we choose. Catherine's voice was firm. We've spent 15 years refusing to back down. We're not going to start now. She stood and walked to the center of the room, where the holographic display showed the 2 fleets like opposing armies on a vast battlefield. If we retreat, we show the galaxy that humanity can be pushed. If we hide, we prove that the Council was right about us all along. We meet them head-on, not to destroy them, but to show them that we cannot be conquered. General Patricia Dunn, joining via holographic projection from her command center, nodded slowly. Our people are ready. Every soldier, every pilot, every civilian who can hold a weapon, they know what they're fighting for, and what is that? Asked a delegate from one of the smaller allied species, Catherine turned to face him. the right to determine our own future, the right to choose our own path, the right to exist as equals in a galaxy that has never known equality. That's what we're fighting for, and it's worth any price." She turned back to the display. "Send a message to the Council fleet. Tell them exactly where we'll be waiting. No tricks, no ambushes, no games. A straight fight between their vision for the galaxy and ours. Let the universe watch and decide which side deserves to win." The message was sent. The coordinates were set. Both fleets began moving toward a region of empty space near the Andromeda Passage, a place that would soon be known by every species in the galaxy, the Battle of Tomorrows. Edge was about to begin. Admiral Grant stood on the bridge of the Resolute, watching his fleet take formation around him. 800 human ships, plus 400 from species who had chosen to stand with humanity rather than kneel to the Council, Maria Santos reported. "All ships report ready for engagement. The Council fleet will arrive in approximately 6 hours." Grant nodded. 6 hours to consider everything that had led to this moment. 15 years of isolation, of struggle, of loss and triumph. All of it leading to one battle that would determine the future of the galaxy. "Send a message to the fleet," he ordered. "Tell them that whatever happens today, I am proud to serve alongside every one of them. Human or otherwise, we are all fighting for the same thing, and we will not fail." In the darkness of space, 2,000 ships approached from one direction. 1,200 approached from the other. The galaxy held its breath and waited to see what humanity would do next. The two fleets faced each other across 1,000,000 kilometers of empty space. On one side, the combined might of 5 elder species. 2,000 warships that represented 10,000 years of galactic dominance. On the other, humanity and their allies, 1,200 vessels crewed by beings who had chosen freedom over security. Hope over fear. Admiral Christopher Grant stood on the bridge of the Resolute, surrounded by officers who had served with him through every crisis humanity had faced since the day they rejected the treaty. Lieutenant Maria Santos was at communications. Captain Benjamin Hayes, recalled from exploration duty, commanded the tactical station. Around them, screens showed the positions of every ship in both fleets. Admiral Maria reported, "The Council flagship is hailing us. Put them through." High Chancellor Vorith's image appeared on the main view screen. He looked older than Grant remembered from the intelligence files, his compound eyes duller, his movements slower. The weight of this moment showed on him as clearly as it showed on Grant. Admiral Grant Vorith said, "This is your final opportunity to avoid destruction. Surrender your fleet, accept revised treaty terms, and humanity will be allowed to continue as a member of galactic civilization." Secretary Catherine Holloway stood beside Grant via holographic projection. She had insisted on being present for this moment, even if only as an image transmitted across the void. "High Chancellor," she replied, her voice steady. "Humanity has a counterproposal. Stand down your fleet and accept our invitation to join the Free Worlds Compact as equal partners. We have no desire to destroy you. We simply refuse to be destroyed. We're outnumbered," Vorith stated. "Your defeat is a mathematical certainty." "Then consider this calculation," Catherine said. "If you win today, you will lose a significant portion of your fleet. You will face immediate desertion from the species who refuse to join your coalition. You will spend the next century fighting resistance across former human space, and you will prove to the galaxy that the Council rules through violence, not consent." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But if we win, or even if we simply survive, your authority is finished forever. So I ask you, High Chancellor, is destroying humanity worth destroying everything you've built?" Vorith's image was silent for a long moment. "You have 30 minutes to surrender," he said finally. "After that, there will be no more negotiations." The transmission ended. Grant turned to his bridge crew. "All hands, battle stations. This is what we've trained for, what we've sacrificed for. Today, we prove that humanity will never bow." The 30 minutes passed in silence. Every crew member used the time differently. Some prayed, some wrote final messages to loved ones. Some simply stared at the screens showing the enemy fleet and waited. Then the Council fleet began to advance. The Battle of Tomorrow's Edge lasted 14 hours. It was the largest space battle in galactic history, and it would change everything that came after. Human ships moved through the Council formations with a speed, precision that the elder species had never seen. They struck hard and fast, targeting command ships and supply vessels before disappearing back into the chaos of battle. Allied ships held defensive lines, protecting the fleet's flanks, while human strike groups punched holes in enemy formations. The Council forces fought back with the desperation of beings who knew their entire way of life was at stake. They had numbers on their side, and experience, and the weight of 10,000 years of dominance, but they did not have hope. And as the hours passed, that began to show. Grant watched from the Resolute's bridge as the battle unfolded. He had lost count of how many ships had been destroyed on both sides. The void was filled with debris and escape pods and the expanding clouds of atmosphere from breached holes. Then, something unexpected began to happen. Admiral Maria reported, her voice filled with disbelief. Council vessels are powering down weapons. They're transmitting surrender codes. Which vessels? All of them, sir. The entire left flank? 40 ships at least. On the Council flagship, Vorath watched his coalition crumble in real time. Captains who had served the Council for centuries were refusing orders. Squadrons that had been reliable for generations were declaring neutrality. His fleet was coming apart not because it was losing, but because his own people had stopped believing the fight was worth winning. Why? He demanded of his tactical officer. Sir, the humans aren't destroying ships that surrender. They're offering rescue to disabled vessels. They're treating our people with honor. Our captains are watching, and they're asking why we're fighting an enemy that shows more mercy than we do. Vorath closed his compound eyes. In 10,000 years, the Council had maintained power through fear and control. They had never faced an enemy who offered something better. Stand down, he ordered quietly. The command echoed across the fleet. Weapons powered down. Engines slowed. The battle was over in the aftermath. Catherine Holloway traveled to Nexus Prime for what would become known as the New Dawn Summit. She walked into the same council chamber where she had refused the treaty 17 years earlier. This time, she did not walk alone. Behind her came ambassadors from 32 species, members of the Free Worlds Compact who had chosen a different path for the galaxy. Vorath met her at the center of the chamber. He seemed diminished somehow, as if his defeat had aged him decades in a matter of days. You have won, Secretary Holloway. The Council recognizes humanity's right to self-determination. We will not interfere with your expansion or your alliances. What more do you want? Catherine extended her hand in the human gesture of greeting and peace. We want you to join us, she said. Vorath's compound eyes blinked in confusion. Join you? After everything we've done? The galaxy is vast, High Chancellor. There's room for all of us. But only if we stop treating interstellar civilization as a hierarchy to be climbed and start seeing it as a community to be built. Your species has wisdom and experience that humanity needs. We have innovation and determination that you need. Together, we could accomplish things neither of us could imagine alone. She kept her hand extended. This is the treaty humanity will sign. Not one of subjugation, but one of partnership. True partnership. Are you willing to take that step? For a long moment, Vorath said nothing. The chamber was silent. Every eye and sensor focused on the High Chancellor of the oldest civilization in the galaxy. Then, slowly, he reached out one of his clawed appendages and grasped Catherine's hand. Perhaps, he said quietly, we have been doing this wrong for 10,000 years. Perhaps it is time to learn from our children. The New Dawn Accords were signed that day. They established the Galactic Commonwealth, a voluntary alliance based on mutual respect, equal participation, and shared advancement. No species would be forced to join. No species would be punished for refusing. Humanity had not merely survived the galaxy's rejection. They had transformed it. 50 years later, Admiral Benjamin Hayes, now an old man with gray hair and hands marked by decades of service, stood before a memorial on the colony world of New Horizon. The monument bore the names of every human who had died during the isolation years and the battles that followed. His granddaughter Rebecca, a young officer in the Commonwealth Fleet, stood beside him. "Grandfather," she asked quietly, "was it worth it? All the suffering? All the loss?" Benjamin looked up at the stars, visible even in daylight through this world's thin atmosphere. When your great-grandmother, Catherine Holloway, refused that treaty, she knew what it would cost us. She also knew what accepting would cost us. We would have survived as servants. Instead, we survived as equals. More than equals. We became the catalyst for a change that freed billions of beings from systems of control they had accepted as the natural order of things. He placed his hand on his granddaughter's shoulder. "Was it worth it? Ask the Nephilim children who grow up knowing their voices matter. Ask the Serati farmers who trade freely across 100 systems. Ask the young Zelthari who question their elders and dream of change. Then tell me if it was worth it." Rebecca looked at the stars her grandfather had spent his life exploring. "The galaxy was afraid of us," she said. Yes, Benjamin agreed. "And now they understand why. Not because we are monsters, but because we reminded them that fear of change is not the same as wisdom. Sometimes the youngest voice in the room speaks the truth that everyone else was afraid to say." The memorial stood silent in the starlight, a testament to those who had paid the price for humanity's stubborn refusal to kneel, and across the galaxy. Beings of every species looked to the stars and knew that their future belonged to them, not to councils or treaties or ancient hierarchies, because humanity had said no. And in saying no, they had changed everything.